Uhuru, and welcome to tonight's web event entitled Victory to Mexican People, Down with Trump's Wall and All Colonial Borders. My name is Jamie Simpson, a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and I am delighted to be joined tonight by Jesse Neville, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement's national chair and a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee. Uhuru, Jesse.
Uhuru, Jamie. Good to be here.
Great to have you. Uhuru. So tonight we are discussing the roots of this whole situation taking place on the border with Trump having shut down the federal government for nearly 2 months now. And the demand is that Congress approve funding for Trump's wall along the southern border of the United States. And I should say that this program is hosted by the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement has these webinars, or these web talk shows, every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, starting at 8 p.m. on the Uhuru Solidarity Movement YouTube channel and on Facebook. And we invite you to share this video far and wide, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe to get notifications. So we want to say a bit about who we are as the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. If tonight is your first time tuning into one of our webinars, we want to thank you for joining us and let you know what it is that you're getting into. So we are an organization of primarily white or European people who work under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. We are the mass organization of the African People's Solidarity Committee, which was formed by the African People's Socialist Party as a way for the African Revolution to be inserted into the white community, as a way for white people to come under the leadership of the African Revolution and struggle within their own communities to raise reparations, material solidarity that goes to the African liberation movement, to the African Revolution. And that's exactly what you have the opportunity to do in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Our principles of unity are simply that we are under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, so we're under African leadership. We stand in solidarity with African self-determination, and we organize in the white community for reparations to African people. We believe that all white people owe reparations to African people everywhere. So if you would like to find out more about that, you can go to uhurusolidarity.org, find out information, and we encourage you to join. But tonight, this webinar is a specific fundraiser for the Black Power Blueprint, which is an incredible project. This is funding African dual and contending economic power and economic independence and self-determination for the African nation. It exists here in St. Petersburg in the form of Black Power 96.3, in the form of the Uhuru House, and most recently it exists in St. Louis, Missouri, where an Uhuru House has recently been established within the past year and a half from a dilapidated building on West Florissant Avenue in the most impoverished area of St. Louis, the black community, the African community, and the upcoming Uhuru Jiko, or Freedom Kitchen, which is being developed from an old boathouse. And tonight we have the goal for the evening of raising $600. And with your help, we know that we can do that. We've done that before, and we're going to do it again tonight. And the place to go, if you'd like to start making contributions to this incredible project, the Black Power Blueprint in St. Louis, Missouri, you can go to blackpowerblueprint.org. And we wanted to begin, as always, this webinar by expressing our profound salute and appreciation to Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the leader and founder of the Uhuru Movement, chair of the African People's Socialist Party, the African Socialist International, and leader of the worldwide vanguard of the African Revolution. So Uhuru to Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And we also would be remiss if we didn't salute Deputy Chair Ona Zene Yeshitela, the Deputy Chair Onizene is the visionary, on-the-ground leader of the Black Power blueprint in St. Louis and the party's economic work at large. So we want to salute our leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, the vanguard of the African working class and the African Revolution on the continent of Africa and throughout the world. And we want to salute our direct leadership in the form of Chairwoman Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the first white woman to genuinely take a stand for material solidarity in the form of reparations to African people and carry that out. Uhuru, and salute Chairwoman Penny Hess.
Uhuru.
And we are very honored to be joined by the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, a member of the National Central Committee of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Uhuru Jesse Neville.
Uhuru Jamie Simpson, and Uhuru to everybody out there watching tonight. Thank you for joining us and tuning into this webinar. And I do want to just echo the salutes of our leadership, the African People's Socialist Party, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Onizene Yeshitela, the entire National Central Committee, and the entire membership of the African People's Socialist Party, and also the leadership of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Chairwoman Penny Hess, who is usually seated right here on our webinars, and who coordinates the Black Power Blueprint Reparations Funding Campaign, which this webinar tonight is connected to. Even though it's being broadcast from Uhuru Solidarity Movement, it is still also a fundraiser for the Black Power Blueprint that hosts its own webinars every other week. And we do want to salute Chairwoman Penny for leading that process and always bringing such incredible presentations. And we will do our best to live up to the standard that she has set in these programs. So I just wanted to say that, and also remind everyone, start donating now. Don't wait until we get to it later. Let's start going to blackpowerblueprint.org, put in your reparations, and we're going to talk about the programs. We're actually going to show you an amazing video that was produced by the Black Power Blueprint campaign under the leadership of Deputy Chair Onizene Yeshitela. And we want to give a huge salute to the chairman and the party right now, because the chairman is in the so-called United Kingdom preparing to speak at the Oxford Union debate. And he was invited to debate as an expert on Africa, to debate basically neo-colonial heads of state who represent different sectors of the African petty bourgeoisie. And they're going to be in a debate about the African Union and the role of Africa in the world and how Africa can achieve unification. So imagine Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the leader of the worldwide party of African workers, fighting for the unification and liberation of Africa under the leadership of the African working class, under the leadership of a socialist government that unites all of Africa, versus all of these neo-colonial petty bourgeois figureheads. That's going to be incredible. And this is the first time Black Power has set foot in the Oxford Union debate since 1964, when Malcolm X was invited to speak.
Wow.
So this is incredible. The chairman this is the sequel to Malcolm X's famous speech that he delivered in 1964 that was one of the things that catapulted Black Power as a demand into the international arena. And that's what we're seeing happen right now. African internationalism, the theory of African internationalism. I have here the book, An Uneasy Equilibrium, that Chairman Omali Yeshitela wrote. He's got a new book coming out next month called Vanguard. And this theory, this body of this school of thought, of African internationalism is being recognized as a legitimate revolutionary philosophy, even by the bourgeoisie, even by the center of the imperialist thinking representatives in the form of the Oxford Union. So this is very powerful, and the party and the chairman have said that this is going to reverberate way beyond what happens in that union debate hall on Thursday. And there's also going to be an event in London hosted by the African People's Socialist Party and with Secretary General Louise Kinshasa. Chairwoman Penny Hess is there. She's going to speak, and of course the chairman's going to speak. And it's very exciting. That's what's going on right now. Not to mention the fact that all throughout the United States, this past yesterday, Monday, there were Martin Luther King events hosted by the Uhuru movement in every single region of the country. There was here in St. Petersburg, in Oakland, California, in Philadelphia, in Huntsville, Alabama, in what am I missing? St. Louis, Missouri. There were huge volunteer days. Hundreds of people came out. Big events. There was a concert here. Just amazing cultural events happening to reclaim the legacy of Martin Luther King as someone who fought for African people and was ultimately assassinated by the FBI. So the Uhuru movement is winning, and it's an honor to be on the winning side and to be part of one of the party's organizations, the African People's Solidarity Committee, and the mass organization, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So tonight's webinar has a goal to raise $600 for the Black Power Blueprint, and we want to say that the Black Power Blueprint is funded completely by the people. It's built by the African working class and funded by African people and white people who pay reparations. It's not funded by anything else. And the first phase of the campaign raised thousands of dollars for the renovation of the Uhuru House. Beautiful, beautiful community center in the middle of, the exploited and oppressed African working class community of North St. Louis. And it went from a dilapidated building to a state-of-the-art, beautiful venue and event space. And that was because of you, people who are watching, who went to blackpowerblueprint.org and put in your resources, and you see where the money goes. You can see the receipts in the form of actual buildings and marketplaces that are being built, and the community commercial kitchen that is being built. You can see where the money goes. So,
and Chair Jesse, for anyone who might be joining us for the first time, could you just say a bit about the significance of St. Louis for those who don't know its proximity to Ferguson?
Ferguson is a suburb of St. Louis County, and the Uhuru movement, the chairman himself, went to Ferguson, went to St. Louis days after the rebellions began, because he said he was reading the newspaper and he wasn't reading about hands up, don't shoot, and Black Lives Matter. He was reading about African people chanting, kill the police.
And this was in response to...
to the murder of Mike Brown, 18-year-old African Mike Brown, who was gunned down by a white cop named Darren Wilson and left to bleed on the pavement, hot pavement, for 4.5 hours. So the chairman went there, he started organizing, he recruited right in the middle of a demonstration Columbine Antoinette, who is now the president of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, and they have built an amazing, vibrant, dynamic movement in St. Louis, led by the African working class. Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela went there for a whole year, only expecting to be there for a couple of weeks, ended up there a whole year, and just the amazing leadership of Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, that not only did she have to navigate all the different ins and outs of dealing with the city and contractors and real estate and all this kind of stuff, but she was there, as the chairman put it in one of his writings, she was there through the torrid, sweltering heat of summer and in the freezing cold of winter, on the ground with her steel-toed boots, actually directing the work from the construction site itself. So, and now there is a beautiful Uhuru House, and there's more to come from St. Louis. So we're in phase 3 of the funding campaign right now, because the Uhuru House is there. The 2 condemned buildings across the street were demolished to make room for a marketplace, and there's a flagpole with the red, black, and green flag, a beautiful red, black, and green flag that flies 50 feet above the Uhuru House. So we want to show you a quick video, and then we're going to talk about the border. We're going to talk about Donald Trump. We're going to talk about the attacks on Mexican people.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about how white people who are disgusted by seeing children being separated from families and seeing violence and Trump shutting down the federal government to get money for his border wall. What can you do to take a stand in solidarity with the Mexican people? How does that relate to the Black Power Blueprint? We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But first, Kyle, our engineer, is going to show us a clip of the Black Power Blueprint project. Uhuru.
North of the infamous Delmar Divide is the other St. Louis, where 70% of those living in poverty are African, and hunger is a daily reality. The Black Power Blueprint has brought real hope back to this community, opening up opportunities for economic development and the revival of African culture, for which St. Louis is famous. Last year, with tremendous worldwide support and community volunteers, an abandoned and dilapidated building at 4101 West Florissant was rapidly transformed into a thriving Uhuru House Community Center. Condemned buildings across the street from the Uhuru House were demolished, and the lot will soon be paved and fenced with lighting for the One Africa, One Nation community marketplace. A 50-foot flagpole was erected on this land, flying a 25-foot red, black, and green African flag. Renovations on the third floor of the Uhuru house are wrapping up for additional office and program space, with insulation, drywall, and mudding and taping. In the next few weeks, the wiring, plumbing, and flooring will be completed in a fourplex apartment building, earmarked for housing for our African Independence Workforce Program, creating jobs for those re-entering our community from the prison system. We will upgrade all bathrooms and kitchens, install stoves, refrigerators, cabinets, and fixtures, and the apartments will be furnished. Other projects for Phase 3 include architectural plans, new roofing, and new windows for the beautiful Chico kitchen, located in an Art Deco building on Goodfellow Boulevard that had once been a boat dealership. As our most ambitious project so far, Chico will include a cafe, bakery, community kitchen, and the headquarters of Uhuru Foods and Pies, one of the 26 economic institutions of the Black Star Industries and African People's Education and Defense Fund around the U.S.
This is not just to set up some kind of institution. This is a project in the hands of the African working class. And the class has to have power for us to be free.
This life-changing project is coordinated by Deputy Chair Ona Zane Ishitela.
It is really inspiring to see how much the people love this project and looking forward to the marketplace and all the other projects. This is a positive response to gentrification because it's about more than just keeping our community. It's about building economic self-reliance for our community. The Black Power Blueprint is economic power in the hands of the African working class. Donate to this unique project, which is changing the world day by day.
Uhuru. Welcome
Black
back.
Power Blueprint.
What an amazing video. I want to salute that video.
Yes.
Is that another Kyle Weiss production?
Kyle Weiss.
All right, Kyle Weiss, we want to salute you.
Uhuru.
Thank you to our studio audience here.
Yes.
And our AV team. That was a really significant video. And
Yes.
one thing that I took note of, Chair Jesse, is the Delmar Divide, which I assume is, like many cities that we know of throughout the United States, a colonial border. It's the train tracks, the other side of town. It's where the African community experiences a colonial hell. A completely different America than the one that we experience. And that brings us to the question of colonial borders and the question that's burning right now in the national discussion, Trump and the question of the wall on the border. So I'd like to turn it over to you, Comrade Jesse, to lead us through this.
Okay, let's do this. So, Uhuru. So let's talk about Trump, and let's talk about the fact that Trump has shut down the federal government now for almost 2 months, right? So there's thousands of people who are out of work, they're waiting in line for food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what's going on here? Trump claims that he shut down the federal government. Well, he claims, and this is the reason why, to get his way on the funding that he wants to build a border wall. And he, of course, built the wall. This was one of his main campaign promises to his base, was to build a wall along the southern border to block Mexican people from coming onto U.S. territory, quote unquote. We're going to talk about that in a second.
Right. And to make Mexico pay for it, allegedly.
And to make Mexico pay for it. So amongst liberals, there's a lot of hysteria, a lot of outrage about Trump, about his wall. And even though our webinar tonight is called Down with Trump's Wall, we also wanted to make clear, down with Trump's wall and all colonial borders. Yeah. And we have to understand, as Chairman Amalia Shitela has made clear, that Trump is just a face of the U.S. government and of parasitic capitalism. So what we're going to talk about in this webinar tonight is the origins of the fact of these borders that exist today to begin with. Because Trump is talking about building a wall, but the United States itself would not exist if not for the enslavement of African people and killing off almost an entire continent of human beings and stealing their land, including those indigenous people who are now being called illegal immigrants for crossing a false border that was not there yesterday to come back onto their own land. And we want to make clear up front, before we go into this history, we're going to read from Chairwoman Penny Hess's book, Overturning the Culture of Violence, and we're going to talk about the policies under previous administrations of the U.S. government, going back to the original theft of Mexico by the United States in 1848. But we want to make clear up front that the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, as the white organization of the African People's Socialist Party, stands in unconditional solidarity with the Mexican people and with all indigenous people in their struggle to take back their land. That this land is not our land. Sorry, Woody Guthrie or whatever. Was that his name?
Yes.
Yes. This land is not our land. This is their land. We stole this land at gunpoint. We are colonial settlers. We are the illegal aliens occupying stolen indigenous land. And we committed the most horrific genocide, a Holocaust, against the indigenous people of this land, including the people now referred to as the Mexicans, that land was stolen at gunpoint. And I grew up being taught that in history classes that actually there was a war, the Mexican-American War, and then Mexico sold those territories to the United States. And that is a complete lie, and we're going to talk about that tonight. So we stand with the indigenous people, and we stand with African people inside this country and around the world who are fighting for their liberation and self-determination. And we understand that, as Chairman Omali Shatella has explained, that the social system that we live under is parasitic capitalism, that capitalism was born as white power. Capitalism was born as a parasite on the body of humanity. That before the rise of capitalism, the majority of the peoples on the planet Earth, including indigenous peoples of what later came to be called the so-called Americas, were enjoying advanced, magnificent civilizations, whereas we, quote-unquote, white people, we did not exist as an entity at that point. We were warring tribes in feudal Europe, fighting each other in barbaric ways for access to scarce and meager resources. That we rescued ourselves from those conditions by leaving Europe, by assaulting Africa, by assaulting this land and other lands of indigenous peoples and stealing their land and giving smallpox-infested blankets and committing all kinds of horrendous genocidal violence, the likes of which the people of this continent had never experienced before. They didn't even have words for the things that we did to them as white people, as settlers, and that we conquered this continent and we created the United States of America and capitalism on the backs of African and indigenous people. And it did not start with Donald Trump. It didn't start with Donald Trump. So we're going to talk about that tonight, and we're going to show you some videos of violence at the border, and we're going to show you some videos of resistance at the border, and we're going to show you a video of Benjamin Prado, the Undersecretary of Unión del Barrio, which is a powerful revolutionary Mexican organization that has worked with the African People's Socialist Party for over 30 years, speaking at a recent demonstration of the Black is Back coalition. So we want to say to any white people watching this that if you are disgusted and outraged by what you see happening with the border crisis today, then you need to come into the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. You need to take a stand in solidarity with the anti-colonial struggle of African, indigenous, the Mexican people, the Arab people, and all colonized and oppressed peoples fighting to destroy imperialism and regain access to their resources and the destinies of their children. That's what this is about. And that includes, because we look at Israel, we look at Australia, we look at the North America, you're looking at the same thing. You're looking at white nationalist colonial settler states built on stolen land, built through genocide and slavery. And all white people owe reparations, whether a white person in North America or whether a white person in Australia. And we know that there are going to be white people who will unite with imperialism and unite against the African Revolution, but we also know that there will be millions and millions of other white people like us and like those of you who are watching who will want to take a side on the right side of the question and on the forward side of history and join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So let's talk some history here. So first of all, right now we're looking at this big debate happening between Trump and Congress that is the reason why he shut down the federal government. However, it's not a debate about whether or not they should build a wall. It's a debate about how much money they should spend on it. Trump wants to spend over $5 million. Congress supposedly wants to spend a little over $1 million, although there are other reports saying that Congress is willing to spend up to, I'm sorry, not million, billion, that Congress is willing to spend up to $10 billion as long as they use a word other than wall to describe the increase in security enforcements happening along the border.
So it becomes a debate about semantics.
It's a semantic debate. We want to remind you to go ahead and go to blackpowerblueprint.org and contribute throughout this discussion. I also want to point out that, Chairman Omali Yeshitela made a very powerful video statement called "White Man Go Home." You saw that, right, Jamie?
Yes, we played it on this program about a few months ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we did. And if you haven't seen it, go to YouTube when you're done watching this and type in "White Man Go Home," Omali Yeshitela. Watch that clip from the chairman, because he responds to the hypocrisy of the widespread white liberal outrage about the fact that, those pictures were released of children crying who were being separated from their families. And there were liberals, including, pundits in the media, who said that Trump had strayed from the American way by separating their families and separating children from families and detaining children and things of that nature. And this was when there were caravans of of thousands, hundreds of thousands of indigenous people coming to the Mexican border, fleeing persecution in their own countries, carried out by governments backed by the United States of America. So they're being forced out of their countries by the U.S. and then being faced with the National Guard and federal troops when they reached the Mexican border, this false, illegitimate, white nationalist colonial border. But we want to take a look at that, because as disgusting as Donald Trump may be, is he any different than Barack Obama? Is he any different than George W. Bush? Is he any different from Bill Clinton? Is he any different from in the case of Clinton and Obama, Democratic Party presidents who presided over almost identical policies as to the ones that Trump has prided himself on? So I have a quote for it. First of all, let's talk about Obama.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people right now who miss Obama. Trump is a fascist. Trump is a dictator. He's a monster. He's doing these terrible things. If only we could go back to the innocent days of Barack Obama, who is known amongst the Mexican liberation movement as the deporter-in-chief, for the fact that under Obama, more Mexican people were deported from this country than at any other time in U.S. history since the theft of Mexico in 1848. Since the theft of half of Mexico in 1848. How many Mexican people did Obama deport? 2.7 million people were kicked out of this country by the Obama administration. That comes out to 1,000 people per day were forced out of this country. And in January of 2000, what year was it that Trump actually became president? Was that 2017 when he was inaugurated?
He won the election in 2016. He was inaugurated,
so he was inaugurated in 2017. So right before Trump's inauguration. So Trump was inaugurated January 20th, right? Right before his inauguration, January 4th, the Obama administration announces a new wave of immigration raids, and they clarified unaccompanied children and families will be deported. So that was Obama's last move before he left office, was to initiate a final wave of brutal raids that specifically stated that they were willing to deport children and separate families. So that was Obama. Now let's go back a little bit further. Bill Clinton, here's a quote for you. Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. Our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders, hiring a record number of new border guards, deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, cracking down on illegal hiring, and barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens. That was not Donald Trump, that was Bill Clinton.
And Jesse, it strikes me how similar that language is to the language he used for, I believe it was called the Omnibus Crime Bill.
That's right.
That year, that put 100,000 more police officers on the streets of North America, that began privatizing the prison system and inflating the numbers of African people and indigenous people in U.S. prisons.
Absolutely. Then you have Barack Obama, as I mentioned, the deporter-in-chief, who put it in his 2013 State of the Union address. He said, real reform means border security, putting more boots on the southern border than at any other time in our history. So Trump is just trying to catch up with Obama when it comes to boots on the ground and deploying troops at the border. Obama raised the bar on that. So we want to show you now a clip. Unión del Barrio, the Mexican National Liberation Organization, has been on the scene. They've been very busy organizing not only on the border question, but also within the school system. They've been leading a powerful strike of teachers in LA, and they are also involved in resisting the violence on the colonial border. So they were out at the border in San Diego, and they recorded the following video footage portraying the military repression taking place at the border in San Diego.
Let's go to that clip now.
Esta es nuestra Tijuana violenta.
Uhuru, welcome back to the USM webinar. You just saw a clip of terror at the border. Uhuru, Jesse, did you want to say anything about that clip?
Well, it's just extremely horrifying seeing what's happening there, but on the other side is the resistance of the Mexican people, and we want to go ahead and turn to a clip of a march that was led by Unión del Barrio, where they were resisting the colonial violence that happened there. So this is also from California, occupied Mexico, and this is a march that happened just a couple of months ago.
back to the Uhuru Solidarity Movement's Tuesday night webinar that occurs every second and fourth Tuesday of the month. And tonight's edition is entitled Down with Trump's Colonial Wall and All Colonial Borders. And we have a very special guest on the line right now. I'm going to turn it over to Chair Jesse.
Uhuru, well, I am very excited to say that we have Benjamin Prado on the line with us, a leader of Unión del Barrio. We're very honored to be joined by you, and we apologize for some confusion in terms of we were not sure if we were going to be able to have this extremely important guest on tonight, but we're very happy that we do, very excited that we do, and very much looking forward to hearing from you and appreciate you being on with us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you to the Uhuru movement, Uhuru Solidarity for having us on. We're always excited to participate and engage in this political struggle that's happening and taking place, especially in this whole question of the borders. So thank you all.
Uhuru. So tonight we were going to be talking about the history, the current situation with the border, with Trump and the border, and we were just discussing how Trump's policies do not really represent a fundamental deviation from Obama or Bush or Clinton or the policy of U.S. imperialism since the theft of Mexico. And I was wondering first if there's anything that you want to say about what's going on right now with the situation at the border and Trump's wall that he's talking about building. Anything that you wanted to say on that before we go into the history of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the current political context is, it's the most accelerated manifestation of the last 25-year policy of building and erecting border walls, putting border patrol, and the creation of immigration and customs enforcement throughout every barrio, in essence, Huntingtown, Mexicans, and other, Central American working people throughout this continent, and also other nationalities. But at the end of the day, it's to reinforce occupation, but to reinforce a economic capitalist system in profound crisis, shifting that crisis onto the shoulders of Mexicans, workers, of migrants, of working people that happen to try to escape the poverty that imperialism creates. And it goes beyond just simply trying to stop or incarcerate migrants. This is really a war that is being waged in contention with the an alternative economic system that is growing throughout Latin America. And I think that that's important because Mexico, even with the recent elections, we have to really or change in government in Mexico, it also contributes to challenging neoliberal economic policies. Even though Mexico is not an anti-imperialist or socialist type of government, it is an anti-neoliberal government. So in response to a shift in what Mexico has been doing, we really see that there is a reason that goes beyond just the migrants, but a war against Mexico and trying to steal its natural resources.
Uhuru, thank you for that explanation. And when you spoke at the Black is Back conference or the march on Washington that happened in November, I remember you were talking about the so-called caravans of migrants, and you spoke specifically about Honduras and U.S. imperialist intervention there and how that related to the fact that there were people trying to escape those conditions. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So in Honduras, being a relatively small nation of about 8.5 million people, has an extraordinary 66.5% poverty rate within the context of Honduras forming part of the Central American Free Trade Agreement since about 2006. Mm-hmm. And so many years, the Honduras oligarchy had a firm control of the economic institutions there in Honduras. It happened that in the election of Manuel Zelaya, which actually took place in 2006, was changing the policies and moving away from the economic neoliberal structures or agreements and wanting to join the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of North America, a economic block of power led by Cuba, Venezuela, Bolivia, Nicaragua, and other countries to form a block of power that would be an economic alternative to neoliberal capitalism. And so Manuel Zelaya was advancing towards unhitching itself from U.S. capitalism. And by June of 2009, the Obama administration, led by Hillary Clinton, orchestrated a military coup against Manuel Zelaya, deposing him and imposing Porfirio Lobo, one of the most reactionary members of the National Assembly there, and clearly supported and backed by military force trained and financed by U.S. imperialism. And so since that, that we saw a complete militarization of all of Honduras because even the so-called democratic, the bourgeois democracy that existed in Honduras now was being won by more what we consider progressive forces. The Frente Nacional de Resistencia Popular, which is the mass organization of people challenging the coup, were met with horrendous genocidal force, attacking and killing off important political leaders, including Berta Cáceres, which is an important indigenous organizer that was actually killed in 2000 after the military coup in 2012. And so since then, there was a recent election, November 26th of 2017, where Salvador Nasrallah was being promoted by the mass, more democratic forces, and the day of the elections, when current President Juan Orlando Hernandez, a very close ally of the United States, the electoral system there went down. It was, computer systems went down. When it came back up, Juan Orlando was ahead, even though Salvador Nasrallah was winning by something like 5 percentage points. And so immediately, within hours, the United States recognizes Juan Orlando as the winner of the elections, and what we see is massive economic displacement, massive economic repression, people being kicked off their land for these mega projects so that U.S. Multinational corporations can go in and extract natural resources. And so this is the reality that people are escaping this horrendous violence from U.S.-led imperialism. And only up until recently, the United States had Mexico actually doing a lot of the detention and deportation. And since Andrés Manuel López Obrador came into power, we see that now there's a shift where the Mexican government will no longer be deporting people and actually allowing them residency and humanitarian visas for those that enter Mexican territory. So it's a shift from what was Enrique Peña Nieto, a lapdog of U.S. imperialism, who would repress even Central Americans, detaining them and deporting them even before they got to the U.S. Mexican border.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the things that we do want to highlight is that, we consider it an exodus, right?
Comrade Benjamin Prado. This is Jamie Simpson. I'm the MC for the Uhuru Solidarity Movement webinar. It's such an honor to have you on. I wanted to know
Thank you very much for having us.
We're very glad it could happen. And as a leader of Unión del Barrio, a revolutionary organization, could you give us a thumbnail sketch for, especially for viewers who might be watching who are not familiar with the history of Mexico, that we don't hear in these North American school textbooks? Could you give us an overview of the history of the territory known as Mexico and its relationship to white power?
Yeah, so I mean, we always believe in the concept that we are a people without borders. We recognize and acknowledge that we form part of the many indigenous civilizations that have been on this continent for millennia. In the most advanced time, where we have some of the most advanced civilizations in, whether it be the Mayas, the Olmecas, the Mexica, even in the northern parts, the Apache, Cherokee, different nations of indigenous nations. We acknowledge and we recognize that this vast continent, today known as the Americas, for us known as Anahuac, or even Turtle Island, Aviala for others, right? But at the end of the day, we have this huge continent with millions of people living throughout the entire vastness of Anahuac. Again, now known as the Americas. And what we saw as a result of the invasion of really the military invasion, beginning with Christopher Columbus and extending into the U.S. European settler nation, its colonies, and it has been really an ongoing war. The war has never ended for us and has not ended since the coming of Europeans onto this continent. We see, even with the ideological premise of manifest destiny, right, which was the justification for the expansion of the settler colonies westward. Mexico, for all intents and purposes, was also born from a struggle of independence against Spanish colonialism, and by 1821 had gained its independence from Spain and had formed a nation state, incorporated much of the territory that is now everything from Nicaragua all the way up through and including Oregon, Idaho, Utah, and that definitely included California, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Mexico, Texas. So it's huge, massive land that formed part of Mexico. And one of the biggest contention that Mexico had with the United States as settlers began coming into Texas was the whole question of slavery. That Mexico by 1821 had abolished slavery, that Mexico had in its constitution the abolishment of all forms of slavery, and the United States was actually, especially the southern states, were wanting to expand slavery into Texas, and so that was the biggest contention that Mexico had with these European settlers. And so what we saw was, in essence, the whole justification for annexation under then President James K. Polk, who said he had some kind of conversation with God and came up with this whole concept and idea of manifest destiny, and that today continues as an ideological premise for invasion of countries, for military wars and military occupations. Obama spoke of this. He talked about it in the form, right?
Yeah.
And so today, the current political border as it exists, it was defined by, again, military invasion, war, and occupation. In fact, the Marine hymn begins from the halls of Moctezuma to the shores of Tripoli, right?
Yeah.
Moctezuma being the Mexican, the Mexico City, and that invading army occupying now territory that has always been native, that has always been Mexican, that has always formed part of this vast land known as Anawa. And so for us, the political border is a false border, is an illegal border precisely because it was born from invasion, war, and occupation, and that war continues to this day. In every manifestation, in every way that we can, the consequences that come about because of war, whether it be our dead people, whether we have people dead as a result of simply just crossing. We have people being tortured at the hands of Customs and Border Protection, by the Border Patrol. We have concentration camps known as prisons or detention centers where thousands of people are being warehoused with a profit motive, because now they're run by private corporations, what we consider concentration camps of America, or CCA. Its previous name was Corrections Corporation of America, today CoreCivic, Geo Group, all kinds of for-profit run detention centers. We even have the economic consequences of this war within our own communities, as people are being detained and separated, when families can no longer rely on a family member, because now they're captured in these concentration camps known as prisons, and the economic impact that it has when a family has to even defend their case in court, having to hire lawyers in order to fight a deportation, and with more than already 3 million deported by Obama, and this Trump administration accelerating that process, we see that more and more families are having a huge impact on their economic solvency to be able to even survive. And so we see that this counterinsurgency, even in our own communities, in the form of gang injunction and this border or immigration raids taking place, has contributed even to the entire destruction of entire communities, where now working class people that have lived for decades in certain areas are now being detained, deported, and we even see gentrification happening as a result of that. And so we see the whole destruction of our family nucleuses being destroyed, and the consequences also community as well as social disintegration as a consequence of this ongoing war.
Uhuru, thank you so much for that amazing history and just everything that you just laid out. And we completely unite from the Uhuru Solidarity Movement with everything that you just said, and with the struggle of the Mexican people to do away with these false colonial borders, once and for all. And we have time for one more question. And again, we're so honored and glad that you were able to be on with us tonight. And you were in attendance for the Congress of the African People's Socialist Party, which took place in St. Louis. Tonight's event is a fundraiser for the Black Power Blueprint, and you were there. You saw the Black Power Blueprint, and Unión del Barrio was a huge part of that Congress, and it was incredible. The statements that were given, and just the presence and unity between the African liberation movement and the Mexican liberation movement was such a powerful part of the experience of being at that Congress. And for the last question we had tonight, we were wondering if you could speak on that relationship and why that's so important to the struggle against imperialist white power, and the relationship that you've had as an organization with the African People's Socialist Party for over 3 decades.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was really an honor to participate in the 7th Congress there in St. Louis, Missouri, to really look at the Black Power Blueprint in practice, the Uhuru House, the building of actual, physical space where, political discussion can take place, where a contention with, of ideas can be laid out, and we owe a tremendous amount of our own political and ideological development to the philosophy and theories of African internationalism, to Comrade Chairman Amalia Shitala, because it provides a science to understanding the struggle for liberation, for the struggle against parasitic capitalism. And, for these 30 years that Unión del Barrio has been in relationship with the African People's Socialist Party, we know that our struggle is the same struggle that the African people have been fighting since they were brought here in chains. And we know that the struggle for freedom is going to require that we all, as oppressed and colonized people, suffering under the boot of U.S. Capitalism and imperialism, unite to kick that boot right off of our necks and do away with that sick, oppressive system that currently is endangering humanity as a whole, because we know that this entire system cannot exist without, and the U.S. way of life cannot exist without the extraction of natural resources, without the destruction of ecosystems, without the destruction of entire peoples and nations the world over. And that's why we see this massive attack on humanity as a whole. And, one of the things that we want to highlight, I think in terms of this relationship, is definitely not only the political and ideological lessons that we've learned, but also identifying, what were errors and mistakes from the past, right? Knowing and recognizing that only organization will be able to bring people into political struggle, political life, and to form the necessary power that we need in order to do away with this horrendous relationship we have with U.S. imperialism and capitalism. And that's where I think the importance of building dual and contending power is so important for us, that we see it actually manifested in the form of the Uhuru houses, the projects, the Uhuru food and pies. I think that's really important, is really putting back our ability to reclaim our own labor, to work for ourselves as opposed to having to work for other people. And that is an important example for us to look at and see what are the best ways for us to actually implement some of these lessons that the African Revolution has provided for not only African people but also other colonized people as well.
Uhuru. Well, Benjamin Prado of Unión del Barrio here tonight with us on the Uhuru Solidarity Movement's webinar, Stop Trump's Victory to Mexican People, Down with Trump's Wall and All Colonial Borders. We really appreciate you being on the line with us, and it's a tremendous honor, as it always is, to have you with us. Comrade Jesse, any?
Thank you, Comrade.
Uhuru, no, just again, we thank you. We are deeply honored that you were able to join us tonight, and we definitely look forward to hopefully being able to interview you and speak with you on these webinars in the future, as we have done in the past.
Yes, absolutely.
Uhuru.
I'd love to join you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Benjamin Prado, Unión del Barrio, long live.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. So that was a tremendous honor.
Yes.
And a demonstration of how very real this relationship between the oppressed peoples of the Americas is, between African people and indigenous or Mexican people. It is a deep, deep relationship of struggle, of love of freedom, and of overturning these colonial borders that oppress colonized people. I believe...
Yes, we want to make a call. I mean, again, that was so incredible to have Unión del Barrio Undersecretary Benjamin Prado on the program, and again, we weren't sure we were going to be able to have him on, so we're so glad that that worked out. We were actually going to show a video, but we got even better. We were able to have him on live, so that was very exciting. And I know that people were inspired by that interview, by those statements from Benjamin Prado and Unión del Barrio to go to blackpowerblueprint.org and to contribute towards these projects, because as Chairman Amalia Shatella has said, this is not just some programs in St. Louis. This is an anti-colonial project. The Black Power Blueprint is an anti-colonial project. That means it's anti-colonial borders. That means it's anti-colonial violence. That means it's against the Trump administration, the Obama administration, and all of them that stand for the same imperialist white power agenda. And that means it stands in unity with the Mexican people and all colonized peoples around the world, under the leadership of the African Revolution that is fighting inside the belly of the beast. And as the chairman has said, the African Revolution is part of the revolution of the Americas. So we want to give a shout out to ORED director Kitty Riley, who posted on the YouTube video watching this tonight, who said, "Victory to the liberation struggles of African and indigenous peoples in the struggle to defeat colonialism. Solidarity with the APSP and Unión del Barrio." Uhuru to Kitty, and we also want to shout out Kitty for putting in $20 tonight. Uhuru, Kitty Riley. We also want to give a shout out to Lisa Watson and Amanda Carlozzi, who each put in $50 tonight. Uhuru to both Lisa and Amanda. As well as Comrade Jackson Hollingsworth, live in our studio audience with us tonight, who put in $5. Uhuru Jackson.
Uhuru. And most recently, we have, if I'm not mistaken, the Secretary General of the African People Solidarity Committee, Allison Haney, $25.
$25. So that means that tonight, in just about an hour, we have already raised $150 towards our goal. So we have $450 left to go. That goes straight to St. Louis for the programs of the Black Power Blueprint. So go ahead to blackpowerblueprint.org and get your card out and punch in those digits and make your contribution now.
It really is easy to do, and it is so significant. I mean, this is the Uhuru House where the 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party occurred. This is the platform where Benjamin Prado was able to speak about the liberation of indigenous people and Mexican people. It's liberated territory for African people and, by extension, for all colonized people.
Absolutely.
So, again, that's blackpowerblueprint.org. You can go there right now. You can make your contribution. And if you've already made a contribution, consider making another. And please share this as far and wide as possible. Bring in someone new. There are people out there who are looking for a solution to this crisis of imperialism, who are looking for anything that would give them evidence that there's some way to get past this crisis. And it's right here in the African People's Socialist Party and Uhuru Solidarity Movement.
Uhuru. And we talked about how, before I say that, I want to give a salute to Ruby Gittleson, who put in $25. Uhuru, Ruby in Philadelphia, where they just had an amazing MLK Day, day of service at the Uhuru Furniture Store. I saw pictures online. There were tons of people. It was an amazing Uhuru event. So salute to everybody in Philadelphia, and also want to give a shout out to St. Pete's very own Tama Gadini. Uhuru Tama.
All right, Tama. Uhuru.
So Tama threw in $15 tonight, and that I'm inspired. I'm going to go ahead and put in $15 as well to be like Tama. So that brings us to 205. We have raised 205. We have 395 to go.
All right.
395.
Well, I'm inspired too. I'm going to match your 15, Jesse.
All right, Jamie. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
So that means we have 380 left to raise. That's 38 people doing $10 each.
We can do this. We can do this. We must do this.
Yes.
This is what history has handed us. This is the contradiction we're faced with. And this is the solution. It's in dual and contending power.
Yes.
As Benjamin Prado said, only organization will bring people into political life against these colonial terrorists, against this horrific way of life that nobody should be forced to live, and which is the basis for what we've come to expect in the white community as our way of life. So we had another historical section. Do we have time to read this, or we?
I don't think so. I think we're a little bit running out of time. We want to encourage people to go ahead. Actually, we might be able to go into that. Our program is shifting a little bit tonight, but that's all right.
Right.
We want to go ahead and continue to encourage people. I think we should talk more about why people need to go to blackpowerblueprint.org and put in resources. And I just want to say that there is no other organization on the planet Earth like the African People's Socialist Party. This is an organization that is guided by advanced revolutionary theory, the theory of the African working class, the philosophy of the African Revolution that is led by cadres, African revolutionary cadres who have made a decision that the revolution will come before anything, and who will do whatever is necessary, who will work day in and day out with democratic centralism, with discipline, with structure, with organization to advance the struggle for the liberation of Africa and African people. That's what the Black Power Blueprint Project is about. That's what dual power in the hands of the African working class is about. And it is only the African People's Socialist Party that is doing this, that is making this happen anywhere in the world, and has given white people the ability and the opportunity to sever our allegiance to the system that stole half of Mexico at gunpoint, to the system that is separating children from their families at the border today, and to the system that guns down African people, including children, in this country every single day as we speak. So we encourage you to go to blackpowerblueprint.org and contribute, to become a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and to contribute towards the goal tonight. And we want to salute Comrade Kota, who's watching on Instagram, who said, "We had such a powerful program in Philly on MLK Day." Indeed, sounded amazing from what I heard. Wish we could have been there, but thank you for reporting that to us, Kota.
It's really been an incredible night, and the whole question of African people and indigenous people, and the fact that we wouldn't be able to be here talking about this question with any kind of sincerity, any kind of honest agenda, were it not for Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party having formed the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement as a way for white people to become part of the African Revolution. And as you just saw from Benjamin Prado, and as has been borne out by the invitation to Oxford, and by revolutionary organizations all throughout the world, reach out to the African People's Socialist Party, to Chairman Omali Yeshitela for direction, for advice, for political cohesion, because it is understood throughout the world that the African population within North America is the Achilles heel, as it's been called, of the entire imperial system. And as Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party have often said, you free Africa and African people, you free the world. So this is something, this is the why as to the connection with the Mexican people, the indigenous people, the connection to the people of Palestine and the Middle East, the connection to the people throughout Asia. Anywhere you have European colonialism, people are looking to the African population within the U.S. to see what the status of the Black Revolution is, because it has a direct relationship to the status of the revolutionary progress of the peoples of the world. And this is an objective fact that we have to continually get our heads around, so that we understand the extent of the urgency of our work, the importance of doing this, of raising reparations to the Black Power Blueprint. This is not some charity organization. This is building dual and contending power that sends a direct message to the ruling class that they are losing. They are losing the battle against colonized people to continue to steal the loot that props up their war machinery, their inflated fake economy that needs crisis, that requires hunger, that requires things like the horrific conditions in Honduras that drove the people who were in the caravan. So if you're tired of seeing all this, if you're tired of talking about the latest slaughter, the latest bombing, the latest secret war that's been exposed, this is the way to end it. Deprive them of the resources that they need to keep the imperial machinery going. That's one thing. Deprive them of African people who they need. They rely on African people wherever imperialism exists. African people occupy the lowest socioeconomic rung, right? And this is where the question of revolution becomes so strategic. And this is where we as white people too have a profound responsibility to accept that we stand on stolen wealth. Everything we have. We came from a diseased and impoverished situation, and we rescued ourselves at the expense of the rest of the world. And that's the history that Comrade Prado just laid out for us. That we were the invaders. We were the immigrants. We are the settler colonists. We came here uninvited and took everything. And we took it at the point of bayonet, of musket, of machine gun, of whatever weapon we could devise, and worse. And so that's why it is so urgent that we make this goal tonight.
Uhuru. And we want to appreciate Rose Latoul, who is there in occupied Mexico in Oakland, California, who put in $5 tonight. Uhuru Rose. Uhuru. So that means we have raised $225 towards the Black Power Blueprint, leaving $375 left to go. And I wanted to ask, do we know how many people are tuning in right now? Our live studio audience is letting us know. 2 on Instagram. Uhuru to both of you on Instagram. Right on.
Uhuru, Kristen, and Kota.
16 on Facebook.
All right. Again, we appreciate anyone who's able to share this far and wide, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on
What about
Instagram.
YouTube? 8. Okay, so there is a total of about 25 people tuning in, and $375 divided by 25 is $15. If everybody who's watching right now can put in, if you haven't put in yet, put in 15. If you have, consider putting in another 15. We will make our goal tonight. We are committed to raise $600 in reparations to the Black Power Blueprint. And just like imperialism works nonstop every single day to extract the value and resources of colonized people, we have to do the same to return those resources and to support the struggle of African people to extract that value from the white oppressor nation and imperialism itself back into the struggle for the liberation of African people. We have to work harder than imperialism works to steal that money to return those resources to African people and to colonized peoples and their struggle for independence. So go ahead, go on to blackpowerblueprint.org and let's do this. When we say we want to do this, we mean everybody who's watching this, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Facebook, that you have joined tonight because you want to change the world, you want to see the Black Power Blueprint rise up and be successful, and you know that it takes resources to make that happen. The only thing standing in the way of African people and their freedom is the fact that all of their resources have been stolen and are located in some white person's bank account or in some white community somewhere. So we have to be that supply line of reparations and unleash those stolen resources hoarded in our communities back into the hands of the African Revolution. blackpowerblueprint.org. Go ahead and we will get a text message like the one I'm receiving right now, and we will announce it to the world, the contribution that you put in. So, okay, never mind. All right, so go ahead and go to blackpowerblueprint.org.
Uhuru. Yeah, you know, you mentioned that. It makes me think of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, this stream of reparations, of resources coming in as rear support for the African Revolution, for these institutions of dual and contending economic power. I'm really excited about this latest one, the Uhuru JICO. If I'm not mistaken, Jesse, this is part of the African Independence Workforce Program?
Correct.
That's a really inspiring program. Did you want to say anything about that?
The African Independence Workforce Program is one of the institutions built by the Office of Deputy Chair. I believe it's part of Black Star Industries, but in any event, it's definitely tied to the dual power work that the party is doing in St. Louis, where this is going to be a way for formerly incarcerated Africans. And, you know, Chairman Amali says all Africans in prison are political prisoners, that the U.S. government has no legitimate authority to lock up any African person for anything. African people are colonial subjects. So when those formerly incarcerated Africans are released from those colonial dungeons back into another colonial dungeon called the U.S., that usually they're locked out of any participation in the formal legal economy.
Right.
Or even the ability to vote in many places. So this institution is being set up to train and even to employ formerly incarcerated African people in productive work that contributes to their liberation.
Right.
So that's what it's about.
That last part is so key.
Yes.
That this is a template for oppressed people to build a revolutionary struggle to contend directly with parasitic capitalism. This is not charity work. This is not a handout to one group. This is a strategic location where the African working class rose up in resistance to the colonial army that we call the police. And, I was moved by Benjamin Prado saying that the indigenous and Mexican people are essentially under a nonstop war. They are under assault all the time. And we have to understand that African people are experiencing the exact same thing. We are all part of this unofficial army of white people who are expected to unite with the colonial terror that African people experience day in, day out, even as happened last year on Martin Luther King Day, right here in St. Petersburg, or when they're working in a McDonald's, simply trying to deal with a white man at the counter. They might have to fight back someone trying to grab them over the counter and injure them in some way. So there are just so many ways in which this colonial war against African people, against indigenous people, expresses itself. And this is the only organization of the African working class that is really putting answers on the ground, that is answering the question, toward what end? We see protests all over the country, and rightly so. We see outrage. We see people wanting change, but change in what direction? Toward what? This is an organization that for 50 years has been developing the theory to answer exactly that question: African internationalism.
And we also see white people who unite with that, like Benjamin Rosenzweig, who just put in $5. Ben in St. Louis.
Fantastic.
And Ben is an amazing comrade. I've had the honor of working with Comrade Ben in building for our national convention, which we're going to tell you about a little bit later. I also want to salute another amazing comrade in Spokane, who is also working in the USM Seattle branch, and that is Kristen Forthen, who put in $20 tonight. Uhuru, Kristen.
All right, Kristen.
And here in St. Petersburg, our dear comrade Santosh is watching tonight. Uhuru Santosh, and he put in $10. That means we have raised $260. So just 340 left to go.
We can do that.
That's it.
We can do that.
Uhuru.
So
But I rudely interrupted you.
Well, I was saying African internationalism, and at the beginning of this, we were talking about who we are as the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And I would go so far as to say that I consider myself an African internationalist.
I would go that far as well.
There may be people out there who are saying, but you're white. How can you be an African internationalist? Could you speak to that question of what this theory of African internationalism is that's being so talked about right now, even at Oxford University?
If you're white and you want to be an African internationalist, you can be like Tama Gadini and put in another $5 at blackpowerblueprint.org. Salute to Comrade Tama. Uhuru.
Uhuru Tama.
Because of Tama, we now have only $335 left to raise. And to go more into that, African internationalism is for everyone who wants to be a part of opposing and destroying colonial capitalism. That's what Chairman Omali Yeshitela actually said in a recent study of Omali Taught Me on Sunday morning, that African internationalism explains the world in order to change the world, and it arms everyone. It arms Africans, it arms Mexicans, and it even arms white people on what we have to do to be part of overturning this foul, parasitic social system that has been sucking the blood of humanity for 600 years, and participate in the construction of a new system, a socialist system, led by the African working class and built around principles of self-determination, of national independence and liberation, and unity through reparations. And that's African internationalism. A white person can be an African internationalist by joining and working in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement under the leadership of the party, by becoming a member of the strategic front of the African Revolution going into the white society, and above all, beyond anything, by paying reparations, by showing solidarity not just in words, but in material solidarity with African self-determination. That's what it means to be a white person who can say with pride that I am not African, but I am an African internationalist.
Uhuru. And when we talk about socialism, is African internationalism a neo-socialist theory? Does it replace socialism?
No, it's real socialism. It is real socialism because, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela has explained, capitalism came into being as a world system. It didn't come into being in England or someplace in Europe. It came into being as a world system through the oppression of African people, through the exploitation of African labor, through the genocide and land theft from the indigenous people. So capitalism came into being as a world system. Capitalism can only be defeated as a world system. And just as it came into being through the oppression of African people, it can only be brought to its end by the liberation of African people. And therefore, socialism will also be born not in one country, as socialists of the past have tried to claim, but socialism will also be born as a world system. And every other attempt, Marx didn't get it, even Lenin, they didn't get it because they were still looking at the world through European eyes. And they could not see, even though Marx talked about the fact that capitalism was built on the oppression of African people, he still came to the non sequitur conclusion that somehow white industrial workers were going to lead the struggle for socialism.
Right.
It took Chairman Omali Yeshitela to be able to see and develop the science that the African working class must lead the struggle for socialist revolution, and that socialism cannot come about until that takes place, until the pedestal upon which parasitic capitalism rests is overturned.
Wow. So when we say parasitic capitalism, this is not some expression of capitalism having changed from a former benign format into something different.
Correct.
We're saying that capitalism was born parasitic.
That is absolutely correct. It is not a modifier, when you hear the Pope say, "I like," the Pope will say, "I'm against unfettered capitalism" or something. We're not saying that. We're saying that the chairman is identifying its essence. He's identifying the essence of capitalism by explicitly saying it's parasitic capitalism. And when you don't say that outright, you can be against capitalism like many white leftists and Marxists are. You can be against the features of capitalism like wage exploitation, like commodity production, like private ownership of the means of production, but not be against the essential feature of capitalism, which is that it's parasitic, which is that it requires the blood and resources of African and colonized peoples for it to survive. So we have to be against parasitic capitalism. How are you against parasitic capitalism if you're a white person? You are a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, or you are, if you're not able to do that publicly, you contribute secretly. If you're not able to be a public active member, then you can still contribute resources and reparations. But we do appreciate all of our members who are out there taking that stand, including a very heroic comrade, Diane Tournay, who's in Gainesville, who put in $20 tonight. Uhuru to Comrade Diane. And Diane is in the process of building an event, which we're going to talk about later, All Diamonds Are Blood Diamonds. So we only have $315 left to raise to meet our goal tonight. $315. Wow.
We can do that. We can do that, folks. And where do people go to? BlackPowerBlueprint.org to make that donation. And I can't think of any better way to use your money or any better project to be able to tell people that you're involved with, that you played a role in building. So this is also something that you can share and think of as a gift, that you're bringing your friends, your family into this. Maybe take a risk. Maybe there's a family member that you've been thinking about, talking about this movement to. Tonight would be a fantastic night to reach out to them. Let them know the urgency of what's going on, that so many people are talking about down at the wall.
Yes.
And if we were to just sit back and assume that the Democratic Party or some other imperial party was going to take care of this, we would just rock ourselves back to sleep, and the indigenous people would go on being exploited, slaughtered, locked up, kicked off their own land. And, we continue to consume these resources. We can't reject colonialism and then do nothing while we sit on the pedestal of the oppression of the rest of the planet and consume these blood resources.
Absolutely.
So, and they are all blood resources.
Yep, all resources are blood resources.
There isn't a single iota of this culture that was not stolen from African people, from indigenous people, that didn't come in some way at the expense of the peoples of the world. Yep. So everything that we are dictates that this is the only way forward. If you want a future, this is your future. This is a down payment.
That's right. So keep going to blackpowerblueprint.org and contributing, and we are going to go into some announcements, but please feel free to interrupt us along the way. And how about we take turns reading these announcements, Comrade James?
Sounds like a plan. So let's see.
And if you have any questions, send them in. Send your post a comment, send in your questions, and we would be happy to address any questions or comments that people have.
Right. Absolutely any question. So the announcements include this coming Thursday, January 24th, 8 p.m. Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party will be a featured speaker at the Africa debate of the Oxford Union in Oxford, England, where Malcolm X spoke in 1964. He will be debating African leaders, including heads of state, on the issue of the unification of Africa. The event will not be live streamed, but if you can't attend in person, expect a video of the YouTube of this to be released after.
Wow, cannot wait to see that. So
amazing.
Shortly after that, also in the UK, Saturday, January 26th, 2 p.m., Africa and Africans Must Unite. A special event featuring Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Secretary General Louise Kinshasa of the African Socialist International, Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela of the APSP, Tafari Mugeri of the APSP in occupied Azania will present by video, and Chairwoman Penny Hess of the African People's Solidarity Committee. That event will be at 336 Brixton Road in London.
And then a little further down the line on March 23rd and March 24th. This is an incredible organization. The African National Women's Organization will be holding its national plenary or planning conference at the St. Louis Uhuru House at 4101 West Florissant. Go to anwouhuru.org. That's ANWOUHURU.org for the registration information.
Uhuru. And just so you all know, we're currently at $285 raised, and I know everybody watching this tonight wants to see us at least get to $300 before we close out. So even if you can put in another $5, let's go ahead and bump that up to at least $300, and then people can keep donating as this video gets shared. Send it to your friends and family. Send it to your comrades that you think might have missed it tonight, and encourage them to contribute as well. But we definitely want to get to at least 300 before we close out, because there is so much amazing work happening in this movement, and reparations is part of that strategy. So April 6th and 7th, the Black is Back Coalition for Peace, for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations is holding its third electoral school at the St. Pete Uhuru House. And you can go to blackisbackcoalition.org for registration information.
Fantastic. And then April 13th and 14th, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, the organization hosting this webinar right now, is holding its national convention at the St. Louis Uhuru House, the same Uhuru House that was built by the Black Power Blueprint. And that you can find information about that at uhurusolidarity.org. Again, that's April 13th and 14th, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement's national convention in St. Louis, Missouri.
The Uhuru movement is opening up one of their famous One Africa, One Nation marketplaces in Portland, Oregon. This is going to be incredible. This is happening April 16th. So that is going to be coming out. More information on time, location, and how you can volunteer will be forthcoming.
So exciting. Portland, Oregon, Uhuru.
Uhuru.
And then in late March, the 2019 African Liberation Day will be held in Washington, D.C. This is the event that the African People's Socialist Party was formed around building. More information will be coming closer to the date. Again, that's late March 2019, African Liberation Day in Washington, D.C.
And February and March of this year, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is holding a national tour called All Diamonds Are Blood Diamonds, and Chairwoman Penny Hess's pamphlet will be republished of the same title with a new introduction. So that's coming out this year, and that is going to be held in cities throughout the U.S., including here in St. Petersburg. And registration information for the events around the country is on uhurusolidarity.org, with more events being announced every day. And you can volunteer to help build this tour by contacting info@uhurusolidarity.org.
And are we missing?
No, we also want to let people know about the Marcus Garvey Legacy Cruise, which will be sailing from Miami to Cuba. I'm going. Awesome. I've never been able to go on the cruise, and I've been very disappointed every single year that I've missed it. So I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm going to start going. There's an amazing opportunity. It's an institution of the African Socialist International. It's a fundraiser for the work of the party in Africa. And it's a very exhilarating fundraiser. You get to go on a cruise, which is one of the easiest ways to travel to multiple different locations at once. And this time it's going to revolutionary Cuba. So I will definitely be signing up for that.
Wow.
Every Saturday, 6 p.m., the Uhuru Solidarity Movement is holding weekly studies of the Burning Spear newspaper from facebook.com/Uhuru Solidarity. And the Burning Spear is the official news organ of the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement. And also 2 other things that we're doing as the Uhuru Solidarity movement. Sorry to steal all the announcements from you.
Please.
You can volunteer for the Reparations Challenge. Do you like to cook? Do you like to sing? Do you like to dance? Do you like to write poetry? Do you like to do literally any activity that you could justifiably charge people money to be present for you while doing? Then you can host a Reparations Challenge fundraiser. They just did one in St. Louis called Drag Imperialism to Its Grave, where Joey Cadre, Ella Cadre, and many other drag kings and queens and whatnot performed to raise reparations for the Black Power blueprint, and it was a magnificent success. Almost 100 people came out to the venue and packed the house, and it was coordinated by Comrade Casey Mackey, aka Joey Cadre, and featured a performance by Ella Cadre, aka Ben, who just put in another $5.
All right, Ben.
And that was a reparations challenge. So that's something you can do. We also had one in St. Pete once where a comrade taught us how to make our own chocolate, which is a skill that you want to have. We are going to do a poetry night this month or February here in St. Petersburg. And there's a million different ways. You could do a bike tour. You could ride your bike from one end of the country to another, host events along the way, do press conferences and all kinds of things that we will work with you. Mads Ambrose in Portland is the coordinator of that campaign. Right. And if you're an artist or an art collector or interested in art, you can donate your art or volunteer for the Art for Reparations art auction this summer. All art is political. All art has a political message, regardless of whether or not it puts that on the surface. In fact, if it doesn't, its political message is probably more intense than you realize. And there is only bourgeois art and revolutionary art, and there's no in between. So this Art for Reparations is struggling to build a culture of reparations-based art in the white community and to expose imperialist art for what it is. So Hallie Murray's coordinating that. There's going to be an art auction this summer. Go to artforreparations.org for more information. And we are $10 away from raising $300. So you can go to blackpowerblueprint.org and put in the last $10 to get us to that milestone tonight.
Right, and continue to spread this far and wide and donate at blackpowerblueprint.org. We want to thank everyone who contributed tonight. We want to thank Benjamin Prado.
Yes.
Barrio. And anything else that you'd like to say before we...
No, just thank you to Kyle and to the comrades here, Jackson, Renee, the studio audience, as well as to Amanda for calculating our donations as they came in and informing us. And salute to our leadership, salute to the chairman. We know the chairman is going to destroy the opposition in Oxford Union in just a few days, so we're very excited to hear about that when he gets back. Salute to Deputy Chair, salute to the magnificent, glorious vanguard party of the African working class, the African People's Socialist Party. And salute to Chairwoman Penny Hess, APSC, and to you, James. Thank you for being such a great host, and it was an honor to be on the program with you tonight.
Always an honor to be with you, Chair Jesse.
Okay.
And I want to echo appreciation for everyone out there, our production team, and say victory to Mexican people, down with Trump's wall, and all colonial borders. And as always, we'd like to end by saying unity through reparations! Uhuru!
Uhuru!